Teams use issues to identify and communicate areas of concern or improvement within project documents. Within the Project Admin module, project administrators can create issue types, subtypes, and custom attributes. They also control the permissions for issues across all BIM360 modules. By selecting the Services tab, we can go in and take a look at the issue permissions within BIM360. Selecting Issues on the left-hand side will give us the sub-menus required to control the permissions. Here you will see currently the project admin is the only person with issue permissions. We're going to add in issue permissions based upon the member roles. Selecting the drop-down, we can choose and add individual users, roles, or companies to control the issue permissions. Here we're going to add in the module leader first of all. We're then going to set the permission types for this control. Selecting the drop-down, we can choose between View All, Create, View and Create, and Full Control. For the module leader, we want to set the issue permissions to have full control. Once we have the permission type set, we can then click the Add button. This will then add in the module leader role with full issue controls. We also want to add in subsequent roles for the teaching assistant and the external examiner. Again, selecting the drop-down, then selecting the EE role and also the TA role. We can then have two roles selected and then choose an issue permission. Here we want to assign the View and Create permission. Once we have set the drop-down, then select the Add button. This will then add in the external examiner and the teaching assistant with the required permission level. Once we have assigned the correct permissions, we can then look at the types. Within here, this is where we can control the issue types and subtypes. BIM360 automatically comes with preset types and subtypes. You will see in the list of types, we have, let's say, a design option with a type of design and then subtype of building code, client feedback, design. Within BIM360, we can also create new issue types. Selecting the drop-down, we can add a new issue type. When adding the issue type, simply enter the name required. Under the Active and Inactive tab, select the drop-down and choose this as active. Setting it as inactive means it will not appear in the list when you go to configure the issue type when adding the issue. Under the status set, selecting the drop-down allows us to choose from a basic status set of draft, open, answered, closed and void, or choosing the field status set which has extra statuses required. In this instance, I'm going to select the basic status set. Selecting Create will create a new issue type. Selecting the arrow to the left of the internal design related type will then give me a list of subtypes. As default, it will always create at least one subtype and give it the same name as the new type you have just added. To add an extra subtype, select the Add Subtype. Here we can give this subtype a name. Once the name is added, select the blue tick. This will then add the subtype to our new type. We can also select the three dots to edit or set the subtypes as inactive. It's important to note that when working with types, you cannot have duplicate names for the types. However, you can use duplicate names within the subtypes as these will sit within the different top level types. The next section we can configure within issues is the root causes section. Selecting the next tab will allow us to create a new category for root causes. Looking at the current design setup, you will see there are several options under the design options. We're going to create a new category. Simply give the category a name and then either set the root cause category active or inactive. Here I'm going to remain active and click the Create button. This will then add the new root cause to the list of categories. Expanding the internal design root causes I've just created, we can now add sub root causes. Selecting the button, we can then add a root cause. Simply add the name and click the blue tick to confirm. We have now added a new root cause to our categories. This can also be made inactive, renamed or deleted, selecting the three dots. The next section we configure is custom attributes. Selecting the custom attributes tab will allow us to create new attributes that we can assign to the issues. Selecting the create new attribute button. Once we have defined a title, we can then choose the type. Selecting the drop down will allow us to pick from different types. We have a text, a drop down, paragraph or a numeric factor. Selecting the drop down option will allow me to configure different drop down options. Simply enter the required option, click the blue tick and then add subsequent options as required. Here I'm going to add in 4 different options for the design risk factor. You can also add a further description if required and then click the create button once you've configured all the options for your new attribute. Selecting create will then create this new attribute for your issues. Once the attribute has been created, we need to add this custom attribute into the issue types. Selecting the types tab again, with the new type we've created, we can now edit this type and add the custom attributes. Selecting the 3 dots and choosing the edit button will reveal the edit dialog box. Within the center of the screen, we can add in custom attributes which can then be used for this issue type. Selecting the add attribute button, then choosing our newly created design risk. Selecting add, this will then add the attribute to the issue type. We also have a radio button which will toggle whether the custom issue attribute for design risk is required or not. Ticking this on will make this attribute mandatory when adding the issue. You will also see that the 2 subtypes will automatically inherit this design risk custom attribute. Selecting save will add the custom attribute to the issue. This will then be shown under the attributes column that the design risk custom attribute has now been added to our custom type.